Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on staying on top of security threats and mitigating attacks with SIEM. I hope you're having a great day at work, and I hope that this webinar and discussion session will add more value to your day at work today. My name is Siddharth, and I work as a product specialist for the IT security solutions at ManageEngine, and it is my pleasure to have you all here today. So I'll be your presenter for today's webinar, and we've also got our technical support team along with us to help and assist in answering any of your questions over the course of today's webinar. So the whole point of this webinar is to give you valuable insights in order to boost your security operations. So before we get started, I just want to once again thank you all for taking time off from your busy schedules and joining us. And don't worry, I'll usually keep my webinars short and to the point, and we'll probably finish in about 40 minutes, and then we will have a Q&A session on the live chat as well. But before we get started, I just want to make sure that you have no difficulties in viewing my presentation or you don't have any glitches with my audio. And I also want to just get a couple of housekeeping things out of the way. So we will be sending you this webinar recording over email, and we'll also be answering questions right away on the live chat as well as offline once the webinar is over. So in case you have any difficulties with either the audio or with viewing my presentation, please let us know right away on the live chat so we can help you resolve the same. Right, so I hope you have no difficulties with the webinar console. So like I said, my objective for today's webinar is to focus on IT security because that has become the most important field in IT today. And with new technologies and new adaptations being deployed, you have a whole new bunch of security challenges to deal with. And I think you'll agree with me on this, whether you are here today as an administrator or a security manager or irrespective of your position, I'm sure you'll agree with me that security is a primary concern in IT, and businesses today across the world, and hopefully even your organization, is starting to understand the importance of IT security and the need for having cutting-edge security products in order to secure your organization. So I will be educating you today on what is a must-have tool in your security operations center, which is of course SIEM, or a SIEM solution. So recently, of course, the world has been rocked by ransomware attacks. We had WannaCry, we had Petya, and these two were trending across the globe. So much so that if you just typed ransomware, you had a whole bunch of articles and bunch of security related content on the internet. So these really, in a sense, broke the internet from an IT standpoint. So I'm sure because of the spate of ransomware attacks, this might have prompted you to reassess and rethink your own security systems, because sometimes when an attack doesn't happen, we just take it for granted that our organization is secure. And after something like WannaCry and Petya has happened, you might be concerned now if your enterprise is poised to deal with such threats, right? So when WannaCry happened, when Petya happened, maybe your manager asked you, hey, are we affected by WannaCry? Are we in a position to fight WannaCry if we do get affected by it? And these questions might have prompted you to rethink and reassess your security posture, right? So maybe that is why you're even here today for today's webinar, because you might be concerned as to whether your IT is in a position to mitigate cyber attacks. And I just want to break a couple of security myths while we are here, because sometimes we sort of have these misconceptions in our head about who exactly attackers target and what exactly is the consequence for a breach going to be. So here at ManageEngine, what we did was we conducted a survey contest last October during Halloween. And the aim of the survey was to break common misconceptions and stereotypes about IT security. And I just want to point, we actually broke 7 different myths, but I just want to point out a couple of them here because they are very relevant with regards to today's discussion. So the first is that no business is immune to attacks, right? Because you might be thinking that attacks happen only to big companies, that hackers target only, say, the huge banks and the huge consulting companies of the globe. But the truth is that attacks can happen to anybody, right? Because often the big companies actually have good security systems in place, whereas the small and medium-sized businesses often do not invest enough in security solutions, and they are the ones who get targeted by attackers. Because typically when an attacker launches a cyber attack, he's not going to just target a single organization. He's going to try to spread across the internet, across the globe, and more often than not, the small and medium-sized companies are the ones who get affected by the attack. So that's the first security myth that I wanted to break, which is that attacks can happen to anybody and no business can say that they are immune to attacks simply because they are smaller than the other companies. And the second myth is that the loss caused by security breaches are strictly financial. Meaning sometimes you might be thinking that in case your organization gets breached, you're just going to have to pay a hefty compliance fine and just maybe some cost to recover the data. While that itself is a huge amount, the loss or the cost of a data breach goes beyond this financial loss. Meaning you're going to have a bigger problem of a loss of trust with your own customers. Because if a customer learns that your enterprise was breached, that say sensitive customer data was leaked in your enterprise, he's instantly going to lose trust in your business. So security is so important, not only for ensuring that you don't have to pay to recover data or make your organization liable to compliance penalties, but also because you need to ensure that your business is trustworthy and that your customers retain trust in your organization. Right, so I think we had a small problem with the audio. I've just trying to tweak the settings. I hope you're able to hear me clearly now. So in case you're still having any difficulties, please let us know on the live chat and our support team will help you out with that. Right, so we looked at a couple of security myths and now we need to take stock of our IT security. So I want to start off by asking you a simple question. What would you do if you were faced today, like right now, today, faced with an attack in your organization, right? Think about this for a moment. Do you have the right tools and a streamlined incident management process to handle the attack? So think about this for a moment and evaluate how well your enterprise is equipped to deal with cyber attacks such as ransomware. So if you were hit with a ransomware today, do you have the right tools to mitigate ransomware? Do you have the right incident management process in place in your security operations center to deal with such a cyber attack? So you can also let us know on the live chat what measures you have taken in your enterprise in order to secure your network. So the simple question is your organization secure? And obviously the answer to that is anything but simple. But when it comes to dealing with cyber attacks, it is first important to take stock of the threats that are there in the cyberspace and identify which are applicable to your organization. And then most importantly, if you're in a position to mitigate them. So this assessment of your security systems is the first step to tackling cyber threats. So have a discussion with your team, have a discussion with your management to assess your position, that is how you are poised to deal with a cyber attack in your enterprise, and what are the things that you need to truly secure your enterprise. So some of you might be thinking that you have, say, IDS IPS systems in place, and we've got one of our users saying that we have an antivirus solution in place. But in today's IT security space, security solutions, you cannot limit it to just having one or two isolated security solutions in place, right? Because cyber threats are something that are really complicated, and you cannot deal with them with just one or two security solutions in place. Yes, endpoint security is very important, and you need to have things like antivirus solutions in place, but to truly secure your enterprise, you need something more than all of this. You need something more than just preventive solutions alone. So this is why we need a solution in addition to the many solutions that we are already using. And that is why I say in several of my presentations that preventive solutions alone aren't going to be enough for you. And they alone aren't going to cut it if you want to mitigate cyber attacks. So again, you've said that you have an antivirus solution in place. You might have some other endpoint security solutions. You might have a vulnerability scanner. Maybe you'll have a network IDS IPS system. But in today's security landscape, you cannot just depend on a few security solutions, as in you can't just have the firewall IDS IPS and the endpoint security in order to truly stay secure. You need a special solution in addition to all of these security solutions so that you are in a better position to mitigate attacks on your network. And this is where SIEM comes into the picture, right? So you might have heard of SIEM, or some people say SIM, although I prefer to just say SIEM sometimes. So you need a SIM tool in addition to all of the other security solutions that you have in place in order to get a better picture or a better understanding of what is going on in your network in order to truly be able to secure your enterprise. Now, you might be wondering, how does a SIM solution work, right? I've told you that you need it on top of your on top of your network stack, but you might be wondering how a SIM solution actually works. And this is where the idea of log management comes into the picture. Now, as administrators, you know how powerful your log data is, because log data generated by the systems in your network contain all the information about a particular event. So let us see what we can do with it, right? Because everything that happens in your network will be logged. And even if an attacker tries to escape being caught by shutting down the logging service, that event itself, that is the shutting down of the logging service, that itself can be captured in the log data. So you have all the data that you need inside your logs, and you want to be able to extract meaningful information out of it. So that is the idea, right? How you're going to stay on top of security threats and mitigate attacks by analyzing log data. So the answer to achieving security in your enterprise is continuous monitoring of the log data. For example, you might have heard of an attack like SQL injection, right? Which could occur on your web server or on your databases. So this obviously might be a big concern for you. But did you know that you can detect the attack by analyzing the query, right? By analyzing the database query, you can identify potential SQL injection attacks on your database. And where do you think that you would go to find this data, the data of the query execution? And the answer to that, of course, is your SQL server logs. So in a sense, from the log data, you can identify or pick out the attack and immediately know that you are facing a threat in your enterprise. And of course, then you can quickly take steps to mitigate the attack. So an SIEM or a SIEM tool essentially taps the power of the log data in order to do its thing. And yes, the biggest challenge with this is that several events would occur in your network every day. And most of these events, like 99.99% of these events, would be routine events that don't really concern you for security. So this makes it very hard to detect an event or detect a threat among millions of log data or millions of seemingly routine events. It's sort of like looking for a needle in a haystack, but this is where a SIM tool comes in to sort of give you an artificial ignorance of routine events and only keep you in the loop for events that concern you. But to achieve this, you essentially have to do two things. So the first is to configure the device, whether it's your Windows server or your Linux server or your network device, whatever it is, or maybe even your critical application like a web server or a database, you need to configure on that device to generate logs for the desired events of interest, right? So this is what we often call as auditing. So you need to set up on the particular device that concerns you, you need to set up auditing on that device so that the device can track the events that concern you, meaning it will generate a log entry for the events that you have configured in the auditing settings. So this of course will vary from device to device, from application to application, but the general idea remains the same. That is, you go to a particular device, like maybe say your database, and you set up auditing on it so that it will start generating entries for the events that concern you. So you might, maybe if you take say your Windows servers, you have something called the local or the group policy. So if you in fact right now go, if you're using a Windows system, you can just go to run and key in gpedit.msc and you can access the local policy editor where you can configure the auditing for a bunch of events, meaning you can set up on that system for what all events you would like log data to be generated for. And once you do this configuration, the same logs from all these different devices and solutions like your workstations, your servers, your business critical applications like your databases and web servers, and your network devices like your firewalls and routers, log data from all these different devices need to be centralized in a single location, which essentially is what your SIEM tool is. So what is SIEM? Um, we're not going to really bother too much about a textbook definition for SIEM. It stands for Security Information and Event Management. And rather than being bothered about a definition for SIEM, let us see what it can actually do for you, right? Because it involves, it essentially is the real-time analysis of the events happening across your network, and log management is at the heart of SIEM. And in my view, it can do two things for you. That is, an SIEM can do two things for you. The first is the auditing side of it, which essentially is generation of reports. It allows you to run reports for events that you need. So maybe you can run a report for all the files that were deleted in the last 1 week on your critical file server. Or you can run a report maybe for all the Active Directory users that were locked out of their accounts. So that is one side of SIEM. And the second side deals with threat mitigation, which is now becoming the primary reason for deployments. So an SIEM tool can help you quickly detect attacks at an early stage and help you mitigate them. So what you can see on this slide is a rough depiction of how a SIEM tool works. So it starts with the first step of collecting the logs, and log collection means getting the logs from your desired log sources into the SIEM solution and parsing and analyzing these log messages, of course. So like I said, the logs are what drive a SIEM deployment, and a SIEM tool needs logs in order to do its thing, which is what we had a rough look at in the previous slide, where I told you you need to configure on the particular application or solution for which events it needs to generate log entries for. So the next step after collecting the logs into the SIEM solution is what is known as event correlation, which means associating different events happening across your network and sort of building a relationship between these events. That is, you want to try and associate or link different events occurring in your network. So I'll just go through this correlation again in the next slide and give you a couple of simple use cases to help you understand the concept a little better. So the next step after correlating the events is alerting, which is probably the most important functionality of a SIEM tool. A SIEM tool can ensure that you are alerted in real time that, hey, this particular security event happened just now in my network. And then once you get the alert, of course, you can look into what happened and take the necessary reactive steps in order to handle the security incident. And of course, after alerting, you also want to archive the log data. And log archiving means that your SIEM solution ought to archive the logs collected and store it. After it processes it, it needs to store it at a secure server. So what this is useful for is if you have stored the logs in a safe location, in case something goes wrong, and in case we need to look at something again, we can easily reload the archived log data and perform a search on it. And this is what is used in the event of a forensic analysis, because sometimes some security incident might have happened on your enterprise and you might find out about it 1 month after it happened. But if you want to go back and file an incident report for that particular network breach, and this is really important for compliance mandates, you need to go reload the securely archived log data back to your SIEM solution and then perform the search operations on it so that you can extract a forensic audit report. So this is how a SIEM works, and we'll be looking a little bit more on the threat mitigation side of it, which involves correlating and events and alerting you in real time. But if you're still not convinced as to why you need a SIEM tool, I'd say you need to look at it also for compliance, right? Because you might be having to comply with different industry standards, maybe HIPAA or Sarbanes-Oxley, or if you have a UK-based setup in your enterprise, you might have heard of GDPR, which is coming in next year. Irrespective of whichever industry your business is in, you'll definitely have a bunch of stringent compliance mandates that you need to comply with, or you would be liable to hefty financial penalties. So a SIEM tool can help you stay compliant as well. You can furnish audit reports, you can furnish incident reports for certain network breaches or any attack if it ever occurs on your enterprise. So you need to be looking at a SIEM tool even for compliance in addition to mitigating security threats. But before I look into the threat mitigation bit and show you a couple of simple use cases, I also want to let you know that internal threats matter too, right? Because when we normally think of threats, we think of it as an external force. We think of threats as coming from the outside, that attackers are people on the outside who are trying to breach our network. But I saw this really cool infographic by DTech Systems that talked about the cost of insider attacks in the year 2016. And the stat was something like 20% of the attacks are from insiders. And these internal attacks are on the rise and are costing businesses increasingly large sums of money. Because say if there's a credential theft and one of your privileged user account details goes outside your enterprise, that is going to result in a massive data breach in your organization. And it can even take months, believe it or not, for you to actually be notified that this has happened in your enterprise. So with this in mind, we've also, I just wanted to mention that you might be focusing fully on mitigating external threats, but the truth is that you need to keep check on your insiders in your organization as well, because you might have rogue employees, you might have naive users, and they are an equal threat to your network security. So a SIEM tool, and I might use the term a log management tool or a log auditing tool. So essentially the three are interrelated, and such an auditing tool or a SIEM tool can help you monitor your privileged users, for instance. So if you're able to keep track on privileged user activity, that itself can go a long way in curbing internal attacks before they can happen. And of course, you can monitor other users as well. The main reason I'm bringing this up at this point is to reiterate that you've got internal threats too. You're not just prone to external attacks, but you've got users inside your enterprise, whether they are naive or whether they've turned rogue. You've got to monitor them as well. And an auditing tool or a SIEM tool can help you achieve that. But right, let's go back to the threat mitigation side of SIEM, and we will first look at correlation of events. And when I discuss correlation, like I said in the previous slide, it means correlating different events happening across your network and sort of building a relationship between these events. Now, many of these events by themselves might not be a cause of concern for your security. For example, if you have just a failed logon, that might well be a routine event and might not be a cause of concern for your security. But the reason why a failed logon by itself doesn't make sense for you is because you have no context, right? You don't know what event happened before and after the failed logon, or any other event for that matter. So if you have something like a firewall rule change, that could itself be a routine event for you unless you know what happened before or after it. By itself, an event might not make sense, but sometimes when events happen together within a short period of time, one after the other, it could mean that your network is under siege and potentially possibly under a security attack itself. Now, given the massive size of the logs that you deal with, you are going to have several seemingly abnormal individual events on a daily basis, which aren't a security concern for you, right? You might have several failed logons occurring in your network, which might well be a user typing his password by mistake incorrectly. So, but SIEM correlation is part of that artificial ignorance system that I told you that you get in order to learn only about security events that interest you. So obviously you can't waste several precious hours every day looking at each of the events that don't really concern you. So trying to manually scan events without an automated correlation system and trying to figure out things by yourself in your network is obviously not possible. So here the correlation of engine of your SIEM tool helps you instantly identify anomalous behavior which concerns your network security. And in this way, your SIEM solution can analyze a suspicious chain of events and help you detect an attack pattern at an early stage so that you can proactively deal with security threats. So the correlation engine is needed in order to quickly respond to incidents and ignore the events which are just false positives. So on the slide, you can see a simple use case to illustrate this. Maybe I've just given a lot of general information. So let us dive into a simple use case so that you can understand how correlation can really help you. So this right here is how typically password attacks occur, where the attacker tries to create a backdoor account in order to carry out the attack. Now you might have an attack pattern for a password attack where you have several logon failures where the attacker is trying to guess a password, and following the several logon failures, you have a successful logon, which is where the attacker has guessed the password correctly. And after the successful logon, maybe you have an event like the creation of a privileged user account. So now individually these events, like if you have several logon failures, you really don't know what's happening in your network. And if you have just a logon success, then again you don't know what's happening because it could well be a legitimate successful logon. And privileged user account creations, of course, are something that an administrator would want to track, but independently by itself might not be a concern for security. But say all these events happen together one after the other within a short time frame, that you have several logon failures followed by a successful logon followed by the creation of a privileged user account. This could mean that someone has created a backdoor account and is trying to carry out an attack in your network. My point is, individually these events might not be a security concern, but with the intelligence provided by the correlation engine of your SIEM solution, you can instantly detect suspicious activity, which is essentially the basis of efficient threat mitigation. So let me show you another simple example, and this is where the idea of threat intelligence starts to come in, because there are a lot of threat feeds available which essentially sort of track different malicious IP addresses and domains across the globe, and these threat intelligence feeds can be integrated with your SIEM solution so that in case any malicious source is trying to interact with your network, you can detect that as well. So you can sort of correlate the malicious IP address hitting your network along with the chain of events that follows. So for example, if a malicious IP address is trying to access a particular server on your network and gets the access denied by your firewall, but because someone on the inside modified a firewall rule to allow that malicious IP address to access your server, then you might have an attack underway in your network which could involve the installation of malware, or like we saw in the previous example, maybe an escalation of privilege. So such an attack pattern, a chain of events, maybe several denied connections by your firewall, followed by a firewall rule modification, followed by the same IP address being allowed access by the firewall, such a chain of events can again be captured by a SIEM solutions correlation engine so that you can detect such complicated attacks as well. So here I wanted to mention that threat intelligence is another must-have feature when it comes to SIEM. So if you're evaluating a SIEM solution, keep in mind of what threat intelligence capability that it's going to provide you. So here the correlation engine can detect or capture the entire flow or pattern of an attack in real time as it happens so that you can detect such attack patterns. And this kind of correlation can be achieved by what are known as correlation rules, wherein you can use the SIEM tool to define what are the security events or use cases that you want to look out for. So basically, the idea is that your SIEM correlation engine can detect that the specified events in the correlation rule happened and alert you. And which brings me to my next slide on real-time alerting. So this, in my view, is the main purpose of SIEM, the most important feature. Everything that we are trying to do and achieve with SIEM in securing our network boils down to real-time alerts. We spoke about some correlation rules and saw some use cases, but the end goal that you are looking for is that you want to be alerted in real time that something suspicious, potentially an attack, is happening right now in your network. This will allow you to instantly take steps in order to combat the attack. My point is, the correlation engine by itself isn't of much use unless you get an end product out of it, which is a real-time alert. A real-time alert for a security event of interest. So the alerts are going to help you instantly identify potential security attacks. Now think about how far that this can go in securing your network, right? Because when you are instantly able to correlate events and be alerted upon a suspicious chain of correlated events, you will be in a position to instantly fight the attack. Now, depending on the SIEM solution that you use, you can receive these alerts via SMS or email so that you can quickly then take the steps to curb the attack. And some SIEM tools also help you go one step further, where you can set up a custom script so that when the alert criteria is met, a program can get triggered so that you can proactively mitigate the attack. This custom program will just get triggered upon the alert criteria being met so that you will be able to proactively mitigate the attack. But I just wanted to mention also here the importance of alert criteria, right? The configuration of alerts, that is the setting up of the alert criteria, is most important in SIEM. So a SIEM tool sort of requires a little bit more education on how you can use it than maybe other security solutions. Like you might have things like an antivirus, for example, and typically the installation and setup of an antivirus is pretty straightforward and you can schedule the scans and so on. But a SIEM solution's usage might be a little bit more tricky than other security solutions because because a SIEM solution essentially sits on top of your network security stack. So it requires a little bit of education from your end in order to truly utilize and extract value from your SIEM tool. So here you need to know, your organization's IT infrastructure better than anyone else. So you must be educated enough so that you can customize the alert criteria and get alerts only for the events that concern you, right? So the whole point of SIEM was that you get alerts only for events that concern you, and you don't want to be flooded with 1,000 or 2,000 alerts every day in your mailbox, which defeats the entire purpose of a SIEM deployment. So while you deploy a SIEM solution, while you're evaluating a SIEM, look for one that has a bunch of predefined alerts, which are essentially alerts associated for the reports provided by the tool. And in addition to having a comprehensive set of predefined alerts for common security use cases, you must have the option to customize the alert criteria and create your own alert rules. And this tweaking of the alert criteria, as in once you configure the alert criteria, you need to tweak it, say have a threshold configuration for the number of events that need to occur before the alert gets triggered, or set up something like working hours, because maybe if your organization has a working hour of 9 to 5 for the regular shift employees, and one of those regular shift employees makes a file deletion outside of the working hours, you want to be alerted for that maybe. So you need to be in a position to analyze your security requirements and tweak the alert criteria in the SIEM tool, such as a threshold for the number of events and maybe the working hour settings, so that you can truly reduce the alert noise and be alerted for exactly what you need, right? So I just also wanted to point out here, since I talked about being educated about SIEM, that you also need to be educated on cyber attacks and cyber threats, because cyber threats are evolving every day. So make sure that you are reading a lot of articles, a lot of material on the internet about security, so that you have the information that you need about the most advanced cyber threats, and you have a SIEM solution in place so that you can configure your SIEM tool from all the knowledge that you've gathered, so that you can configure the SIEM tool in order to get alerts for the security events that concern you. So you can also look at one of our resources, which is the ManageEngine blogs, which is blogs.manageengine.com, where we try to post knowledge sharing content and latest trends on security so that you are equipped with the knowledge, number one, and number two, have a SIEM tool in place so that you can translate that knowledge into some sort of actionable data. So that brings me to my final part of my presentation. I've talked to you about how you need to be educated on the latest cyber threats and convert that into some sort of actionable data using your SIEM tool. So the final bit of my presentation is I'm going to talk to you about forensics and the backtracking of security attacks. Now you might be thinking, hey, did you just tell me we can prevent all these security attacks if we have the knowledge about cyber threats and a SIM tool and an optimally configured SIM tool? Well, that's sort of true, but not quite. Because, I mean, yes, it goes a long way in securing your network, but sometimes things can still go wrong. And in case something goes wrong, you want to be empowered to investigate security incidents, and you want to try to limit or ensure damage control in case you do encounter a security attack. And there is a proof for this, right? There's proof that we need a forensic investigation component in our SIM tool, because if we had everything figured out with IT security, then we would never be hearing about data breaches. We would never be hearing about cyber attacks in the news at all. So the idea with forensic investigation is that we're going to use a feature called log search in the SIM tool, because you have all the logs in your solution, and the feature of log search enables you to drill down millions of collected log messages to just a few that concern you in a given scenario. And in this way, you will be able to conduct a thorough forensic investigation. So log search is basically like any other search engine that helps you drill down from a lot of data to just a few messages that concern you for a particular situation. And this is really important, not only for identifying if a security attack was indeed an attack and how much damage it caused, but also for furnishing a thorough report for compliance. So you might have to file an incident report for your internal IT managers and internal audits, and also furnish this data for a compliance audit. So here the forensic investigation, or rather the log search engine, helps you conduct a forensic investigation in case something goes wrong in your enterprise. So think of your SIEM tool as something that can not only help you detect and mitigate security attacks, but also conduct a forensic analysis in case something goes wrong. So in this way, if you do encounter any security incident or attack, you can search through the collected log data and investigate as to what exactly happened. You can find out what was the root cause of the attack and how the attacker actually managed to carry out the attack. So you can find out the exact sequence of events that occurred by going through the log data. And if you have a strong log search engine, you can quickly perform the search, and you can quickly tell if the encounter was indeed a security incident. And of course, if it was an attack, you can quickly take steps to mitigate it. And if it wasn't an attack, it's all cool. So for example, if you come to know of an indicator of compromise in your web server, you can quickly jump to your log search engine in your SIM tool and see where else that particular IP address that was trying to access your web server hit your network. You can check whether it was malicious, where else it hit your network, did your firewall allow the access, did your IDS detect a malicious request and flag the event, and so on. So all these events get captured in the log data. So you can use a log search tool to quickly analyze security incidents and backtrack security attacks. So again, to sum up, a SIM tool can not only help you detect and mitigate attacks efficiently, but also conduct a forensic investigation in case something does go wrong. So that I've come to the end of my presentation. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope this webinar gave you some useful inputs. I've sort of given, I feel like I've given a lot of information in a short period of time. So if you want to always revisit this, we will be sending you a webinar recording. Plus, you can visit www.eventloganalyzer.com, which is our comprehensive log management tool for SIEM. And you will learn a lot more about SIEM and our products offering over there. But I'll also tell you very quickly what it is. So ManageEngine Event Log Analyzer is a comprehensive log management tool for SIEM, and it can help you audit logs from all your network devices, servers, whether it's Windows or Linux, your business critical applications. It can help you secure your network. And we also have a comprehensive SIEM tool called Log360, which combines Event Log Analyzer with two of our other products. One of them is AD Audit Plus, which provides in-depth auditing for Active Directory, and the other is Cloud Security Plus, which does auditing for your public cloud. So with the three components of Log360, which is Event Log Analyzer, AD Audit Plus, and Cloud Security Plus, you can totally secure every part of your network, whether it's your external facing applications, your Active Directory infrastructure, your public cloud, everything can be secured using Log360. So if you are evaluating a SIEM portfolio in your organization, you can try Log360 or one of its components as required. So if you have any queries or suggestions with today's webinar, you can ask them right away on the live chat and we'll answer them. And if you have any further queries with SIEM, you can always drop me a mail. I've given you my email ID right here. And I've also given you Log360's tech support email ID if you have any product specific queries about Log360. So you can reach out to us offline as well. So you can simply go to, you can simply search on Google even for Event Log Analyzer or Log360, and it will redirect you to the respective resources that you're looking for. Or you can, of course, access it from www.manageengine.com, and it would be listed under the IT security products. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today. I will be answering your questions on the live chat. So thank you so much for joining us today and have a great day ahead.